I try to keep, if I can, one very serious competitive lifter at all times, because that's like the project, right? Because I still like to experiment with things. I like to troubleshoot with things. I like them to be experienced enough to be able to challenge and give better ideas back, because that's when the good stuff happens. When you get people that have been in the sport, say they're on the ass end of their career, the 5-6 years left, whatever it is, they're kind of at the top of their game, but I know they still have more, more than what they think. I can see it. If this is fixed, and he's not that fucked up. I like that, because then I've always said when you study this stuff over the long term, even for yourself, you study this stuff long enough to know where I'm going with this. You learn so much, but then when you just work with the high school kids or the average client, you understand that you're using like fucking 5 or 10% of what you know.
Right.
And it's not challenging the part that I really love. The part I really love is give me that. I want to tap into that 10%. I want to tap into what I don't fucking know. Then I got to go look it up. Why is this happening? And have I want that. You know, I'm not getting paid for it. And that's what I love. Let's figure this out. And then have the person that understands. Figuring it out doesn't mean it's going to work in the next 6 weeks. This might be a fucking 1.5-year thing before we figure out, and then it takes off. But let's figure. That's what I'm getting excited about. I mean, that's what that's what I fucking love, right? Because getting somebody from like starting into powerlifting or just starting working out for whatever sport they're doing, getting from that starting point to using my shit, suck, good, great. Getting them from shit to suck is not a big deal. It's not even anybody fucking. It's not that big of a deal. Getting them from suck to good is really not that big. It's not that big of a deal.
Right.
Granted, at that point, you're gonna have to know probably more about what you're doing. Where the first step, any trainer can take anybody from there. That bores me. I mean, I like it. I'll do it, and I'll always do it. Somebody did it for me, and it changed my life. So that's the other thing with those that the high school kids or the younger ones is they're young. They're teenagers or they're in their lower 20s. They're never going to tell you what they're going through.
No.
Right. So you don't know what this is actually doing or not doing for their esteem, for their life, for what's going to happen in the future and all those kind of, it changed me for good or bad, who the fuck knows at this point, but so there's that. I can ramble on about this forever, but that's kind of what I look for. It's hard to find.
Yeah. And that's what I've been noticing as well is coming in with a coaching background of athletes and whatnot to be able to see, like you working with Adam or you working with any of the seriously high-end competitors in the conversations you're having, and I'm like, ooh, I didn't see that. And then I get excited. I'm like, I'm gonna watch the fuck out of that. Like, I'm gonna see where this is going, or I'll just ask questions. I'm like, what's going on over here? What do we got here? Oh, did you see this thing too? Okay. And it just turns into, like you had said, it's that the portion of the knowledge and information that you don't get to touch on.
Yeah.
And it turns into like this puzzle. It's like, oh shit.
It's a huge puzzle though. I mean, it's not, at face value, say when we do the train your ass off thing, is when we do that, that's kind of like this 50-piece puzzle.
Yeah.
You're just putting the big pieces together. And they all kind of fit, and it makes a picture of fucking Pluto, or whatever, some cartoon character.
Right.
Those higher end, it's like 1,000-piece puzzle. With the smaller piece puzzles, you can start to see, hey, this is that dog. Hey, this is the dog with the big nose. Hey, it's Pluto. Yep. And you know that before you even have a quarter of the pieces in there. The bigger puzzle, you have shit like the frame built, like the quarter side. You still have no idea what the fuck it is. You're just still putting the pieces together and putting them together over a long period of time. That's like, holy shit. This is what it is. That is what I love, is starting to see that picture unfold. But the tricky part, it's a fucked up analogy I just started to go down to, is you're not the one putting the pieces on the puzzle. You're trying to have somebody else put them there, which is the person that you're working with.
Right.
So that becomes the fun part, because you got to figure out how they communicate. You got to figure out, where are they bullshitting you? What do they typically bullshit? What do they don't bullshit? When are they overly honest? When are they, you got to figure all this out, and that takes time too. And that can't happen with a person that shows up once a month.
Right.
You just can't.
Absolutely. And I like the puzzle analogy there, because it's, the more I think about it, the more that's accurate, because you're in a position where it's like you're guiding someone to build this 1,000-piece puzzle through the phone. When you're first starting out, it's like you don't really know, like you had said, you don't know their personality type. You don't really know how they learned. You don't really know what they respond to. And it's like, how do we gain more information about where we're starting this puzzle together?
Yes. But when they're beginner though and intermediate, you can do that.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's fucking 10 pieces. So count the pieces. Do you have all 10? Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. Do you have the box? Is there a cover of it? So it's easier to guide, but what happens over a period of time, the more experience and so forth, they lose the cover of the box. All this other stuff starts to go away. So that's where it gets this weird dialogue, because it's easy for me to sit back and rip on personal trainers, online trainers, all these other people, but lose the context of who most of them are working with. Because then when you're reminded of what that context is, they serve a purpose, which could be, done correctly, important in moving that person forward. Because with most people, just accountability, just regular health training, stuff like that, it's not. With most people, accountability is the number one thing.
Right, making sure they do it, whatever it is.
Yeah. I'll be the first person to admit, I don't know if I will ever train strictly for health, ever.
Right.
And I'll freely admit that. So if this has been my life, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In pursuit of basically not health, imagine what other people are like. The people that say used to be your clients, the people that used to be my clients. You put yourself in their shoes, it's like, holy fuck. Maybe that little bit, even if it's what some may say is inadequate, it's enough for the accountability to say, let's just do something twice a week. And if they got to pay whatever, $50 a week or whatever the fuck it is to be able to do that, and then they're actually doing it, it's a hard thing for me to say that's a bad thing.
Absolutely.
So now the bad thing becomes when on the far end, people start charging exorbitant rates to try to put the big complex puzzle together without actually having the person they're working with involved. Do this, because then they're just naive and they're just trying to throw the pieces down. And sometimes they don't know if there's cyanide on that piece.
Yeah, right.
You have no idea what they're doing, because it's not fully cooperative.
And I think for everybody listening, I think it's an important thing to kind of talk about is when you're dealing with a higher end lifter who's dealing with the weights that they'll put on their backs or put in their hands, it's not just reps and sets. Like, you have to think about the literal tissue tolerances of everything that's going on. Because there's a razor's edge of that fatigue, right? You want to fatigue them enough to get the adaptation you're looking for, but you don't want to fatigue them too much and blow something off of their body, which is a very real possibility.
No, it still can happen with all things right.
Absolutely.
So it's for a real possibility. So, the first place I'm always going to look there is the place that most people don't explore or are not honest about. What's their sleep? What's their hydration? What's the easiest thing? What things influence recovery the most? Training only occupies so many hours of the week. All the other time is when the recovery's coming in. So what's going on in there? And so then you think you have the feedback necessary for that, but then you got to ask yourself, are they telling you everything? Which is normally not true. track the sleep. But even all that becomes fucked up, right?
Yeah.
Because if I have an Apple Watch and it's tracking my sleep, how do I know that the measurements that it's actually taking are actually what it's supposed to be? Is the tool even working the way it's supposed to be working, or is it just some bullshit that says what it's supposed to see? So you can have the metrics, but then ask people around. I try to figure out who's in their network that I know, and then you can start asking, around to see from that. Now on a bigger scale, I don't know how that's really done. You can put it in there, but you can manipulate the training. Oh, I mean, you can manipulate a lot, right? But I'd rather manipulate the other factors first.
Oh yeah.
And assuming the training's solid, I mean, there's some fucked up training, I suppose. But if they're doing max effort work for 4 hours straight and they're doing 85 sets of singles, then there's probably some other issues there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But once that's all figured out, and you should be able to tell that in blocks or training phases leading up to when the tissue tolerance is going to be at its highest. So if they're having problems recovering, or another way that I can look at that is maintaining basic position on their warm-up sets, right? So a lot of times you'll see hip instability, upper back breaking down, lats not staying tight. A lot of, I guess you could say isometric, I don't want to say weaknesses, but they're not able to maintain the tightness for the time period of the set. So I get it, after double things are going to get a little weird, but it shouldn't, right? Right. So, I mean, but if you see it's tight for 1 week, it's tight for the next week. This is on the warm-ups before you got to kind of look, here's working up, this is this piece, then this is this piece, and there's 2 different filters that are looking at both of those. Yeah. As the weights get heavier, things should break down. I mean, you're looking for that. They shouldn't be breaking down here. And if they're breaking down here, maybe you haven't done enough technical work with them just yet, right? So then that part should make up, say, 90% of all the sets. But over a period of weeks, if it's slipping, and it shouldn't, 60% less weight, that shouldn't. So is it a focus thing? Okay, so then you just cue, talk to them, say, but even if it's a focus thing, you got to think to yourself, why is the focus not there? What else is going on? What are they thinking about?
Right, you got to follow that rabbit hole down a little bit.
Yeah. Were they out too late last night? Where, they're fighting with their significant other? What's going on here? Yeah. You don't need to ask, but you got to understand it's just not that. That can lead to, okay, this shouldn't be happening, because obviously it can't be a muscular weak. I suppose it could, but it really is not going to be a muscular weak. It's a technical weak. There's a mental thing going on. So the mental thing going on, is just get their head out of their ass. That's pretty easy, to figure out for a day. Okay, they get their head out of their ass. But if it's not, what I'm trying to go is, you should be able to see there's the potential for injury before it even happens. Oh yeah. And it's like, okay, here's this. Now, is this a deload? Is this, then you start asking those questions. What's your hydration? What's this? What's this? What's this? Because the problem is, from what I've seen, if you ask that every single time, they're going to start going into a typical response answer. So you're walking down the street. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? Good. How you doing? Fine. How you doing? Fine. How you doing? Fine. Drink your water? Yep. Drink your water? Yep. Drink your water? Yep. How's your diet? Good. How's your diet? Good. Right? So you ask it every few weeks, there's a different response. How's your diet been going? Well, then, so you got to kind of figure out when to ask.
And it's good, because those questions, I mean, obviously the nutrition, the sleep, the hydration, very, very important. But if they get used to providing you with real answers to those simple questions, they can really start to focus in on how things are feeling in the gym when they're training with you, right? Yes. Like, most of the time, and I'm sure there are definitely freak accidents when it comes to injuries and whatnot in the gym, but a lot of the times it's like, that didn't feel the same. That felt different. And then it's usually like the next set or like the next week or something. There's communication opportunities within those training sessions. So if you can get into that position where you're having those real conversations about the little things, then that helps kind of build up to have better conversations like in the session or from training session to training session or whatnot. So
yes, and I've kind of found over the years that I like to have, well, you've seen this extended warm-up time, I guess is what you would call it. We're in the gym for a while before we start.
Yeah.
With the guys I've known for so long, it's really not that important. But with kind of like, I don't need to add any of these people. I don't need you guys to like listen to this because it's like secret shit. You shouldn't know. But you want to, I found you want to give people the ability to bitch and complain about things just to get it off their chest. Because they're not going to bitch. Well, you won't. You're not going to bitch and complain about your boss, unless you know. But you're not going to bitch and complain about work. You're not, and most people aren't going to bitch and complain about things that really bother them. But they will bitch and complain about other things, if it's political things or whatever it's going to be. So you feed it, right? And I mean, you've seen me do it with people on both sides of the aisle. You know, it's like watch this, right? And just to get them going, and it's. Yes, it's entertaining, you know, to a certain degree, but in a way, what I'm trying to do is let's get this shit out in some way, you know, because in a way, if it's work or what, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it's going to be, just getting that out allows them to focus more when it starts to become time to actually focus.